The Blair Witch Project is one of my favorite films, and it's a found footage horror film phenomenon about 3 student filmmakers who go missing in the Maryland woods. Now, I have been obsessed with this movie for a variety of different reasons, but on a technical level, I wanted to talk about the camcorder used to film this iconic movie. And I think I have that camera in this case. Now, being a camera nerd, I wanted to figure out which camcorder this was and hopefully attain one, test one, and then make a video about it. But the big question was, which camera is that? Now, you get various glimpses of the camcorder throughout the movie. In particular, at the very beginning, there is a great scene where you see both formats that are going to be presented as the movie, because the Blair Witch Project was shot on 2 major formats: grainy black and white 16mm film footage, and of course, the Hi8 camcorder. At the very beginning, we see both of the characters shooting each other, and you get to see both cameras that are going to be used. And we see in this shot Heather Donahue holding the camera, and she is looking through it using a viewfinder, which already shows you that this is not a camcorder that had an LCD screen. So that kind of narrowed it down. And later on, we see a better view of that viewfinder. But the best image that we get of this camera is near the end of the film with the character of Mike holding the camcorder. And we see in this image the actual brand, which is RCA. And that is extremely helpful in helping to identify this camera. But the best piece of evidence in this image is this logo of an eye that's on the viewfinder. And it was to signify that this was a color viewfinder. So that was it, right? Just look for that camcorder. But then things got a little bit more confusing. Now, cut to a trip that I took to Seattle. I ended up at the Museum of Pop Culture, and I didn't even know that this was there, but I accidentally found that the camcorder was in a display in this museum, along with the stick figure. And it was really exciting to see it finally there. But I noticed that it does not have that logo, even though the film has it. So it got me wondering, maybe this was a second camera that the filmmakers have purchased. Maybe they painted over it. What made things even more confusing is that there is a legendary story that's been told countless times that the filmmakers went to Circuit City and they bought the camera they used to shoot the film, and then they later returned it to extend their film's very small budget. But then that begs the question, which is the camcorder that's in the museum? Perhaps it was a second camcorder they used to also use as a prop for the side project they made called The Curse of the Blair Witch. Now, despite that minor detour of information, all we can base off of is the actual movie. And in the actual movie, it has that eye logo. So I set out to find a camcorder that had that logo on it. And things got a little bit more confusing because there are different model numbers, and some of them have that logo and some of them do not. But I narrowed it down to one model in particular called the RCA 943. And it's not just this particular model that has that logo. There are different variants and model numbers that have that logo too. This is just the one that I decided to get. And based on my research, this camcorder came out in the early 1990s, like 1994. And the film was shot in October of 1997. So it is very possible that they could have shot on this particular model, but there's no way to fully know for sure. After a lot of research, I finally took a chance on one, even though it was listed as untested. So I didn't know if it was going to work. And here it is, in beautiful condition. And the big question was whether or not this is just one big paperweight. And so the only way was to test it out. So I put some batteries in it. And what's really cool about this particular camcorder is that it takes battery packs, but it also takes AA batteries. So then came the moment of truth. I put the batteries in, flipped the switch on, and it worked. It was fully functional. Also, a side note, I noticed that the actors hold the camera with a side bracket that has a light attached to it. Now, this camcorder shoots on a format called Hi8, which was an in-between tape format between VHS and mini DV, and it came in a much more compact size, similar to a cassette tape. What's interesting, and this is about to get really nerdy about the way the Blair Witch Project was released. Back when the film was released in 1999, the only way to widely project a movie was on actual celluloid film because video projectors weren't widely available. So the film had to be transferred from this Hi8 tape format to 35mm motion picture film. Now, when the film was transferred to home video release, instead of going back to the original video files, it was just transferred from the 35mm to video. So you weren't getting the direct, pure source of the video. But recently, a distributor called Second Sight actually went back to the original Hi8 tapes and re-released the film in the purest way, which was the way to see it on the actual tapes. The most accurate way to see what this camcorder could produce. Unfortunately, this Second Sight release is only available in Europe, and it is not widely available in the United States. Hopefully, this film will be released in Region 1, and so people in the US can see it in its original quality. Even though, having said that, I do also like the quality that the 35mm transfer gives, because it also has a very kind of creepy, even more lo-fi aesthetic. Right now, the only way to see the film in the true Hi8 quality is through this Second Sight release. Now, the footage is probably what you expect from a camcorder from this period, but it's not about the quality of the footage. To me, this camera and this video is about what it represents. Say what you will about how gear doesn't matter. Back in 1999, it mattered a whole lot more than it does today, because if you shot your film on video, there definitely was a bigger obstacle for people to take your film serious. And what's so brilliant is that filmmakers Eduardo Sanchez and Daniel Myrick subverted all of this by actually baking in this video aspect to the storytelling. So instead of it being a flaw for your film, it became like the main feature. And to me, this is what the camera represents. It's not just one of the best David and Goliath independent film success stories, but it's also this perfect marriage between technology and creativity, and how you should never say that gear doesn't matter, because it matters just as much as the story that you're trying to tell. And to be very knowledgeable in those two different things and having a perfect balance is what the Blair Witch Project, to me, on a technical level, represents. I also just want to give a shout out to the online Blair Witch fan community. It was a great resource. And now that I have this camera, there is one final thing that I have to do. I'm so scared right now. I just found out that this camera cannot shoot and log. I'm afraid to grade my footage, and I'm afraid not to. There's gonna be so much banding. But this camera is built like a tank, and it has a 48mm lens with an f4 aperture. Just one last thing. When I was filming that, I remembered that she had accidentally zoomed that far into her face, and had this camera had a monitor, maybe she would have zoomed out and we wouldn't have gotten that iconic shot. That's just a great example how sometimes technical limitations give you a better result. I love this movie.